Hello and welcome back. I have gone ahead and recorded a bass part and even done a little basic editing stuff you've seen me do before, I'm sure, if you've watched some of my other videos. But I put in crossfades on the bass part here. Let me see here. Do we have sound? Let me just make sure we have sound. Looks like we do. The crossfades. As you can see, I didn't do the bass part all in one take. I stopped and punched in several times here. And let's have a listen to it, I guess. One thing I haven't done yet is I haven't added the compressor to the bass, or really done anything beyond just adding the crossfades. I don't think I did anything else. No, and as I've mentioned before, I use this plug-in for the bass, which I'll just briefly touch on this again. These are the settings they come with this setting called Classic Bass. The only thing I do is I back the volume off a little bit so that I'm hitting basically minus 18 dB or close to it on my fader, on my bass fader, and we'll see if this is the setting I found that seems to get pretty close to that. However, I also add this to the sound, and I kind of eyeball my setting on the threshold here, and I'm sure it varies, but it can be anywhere from where it is right now to maybe down even a little bit further, a little closer to like 9 o'clock there, maybe like about 10 o'clock. That's like, I don't know, roughly 11, I suppose. And I turn the gain off. I don't want any added gain. But let's see. Let's just punch in here quickly and see how close I got to minus 18. It's pretty close. It's peaking a little over there. It's getting up to minus 15. But that's in the ballpark, I think. You know, it's minus 18 is supposedly the sweet spot for digital recording. You know, it's the sweet spot. And I've talked about this before in other videos, but whereas like in analog, you often pushed things even into the red at times to try to get some the coloration that the distortion would give, the saturation and distortion would give in the cases of analog was often something people sought after. Was considered, you know, sounded good in a lot of cases. Such is not the case in digital. Digital distortion is generally thought to be not a good thing. It doesn't sound pleasing like analog distortion did. So there's a lot of plugins and things that have been devised to try to simulate. Here's one of them right here. As I think I've mentioned this before, but this little component at the bottom here is console emulation. And I just turned it on there. It's supposed to add some level of, you know, like I suppose, you know, distortion or coloration to the sound. Honestly, with you know, if I had better, you know, more expensive perhaps headphones and or monitor speakers, maybe I could tell the difference. But I can't tell the difference in my with my setup here. I mean, I have $500 studio monitors and I don't know what these are, $150, $200 headphones. You know, they're not super high end by any means. So I've listened and I just cannot tell. I'll give you an example here. I'll turn it on and off. Tell me if you hear anything. There's off. There's on. Off. On. I mean, I don't hear any difference. If I do, it's so subtle. It's, you know, and I'm not even listening through good headphones here, though, either. As I've mentioned many times, I'm monitoring through these gaming headphones, which, yeah, or something. These are basically $40 headphones. They actually have a decent sound for something that cheap. I had a previous version by the same company that were like $150, and they didn't sound much better than these. Really, these sound pretty good for the price. But anyway, straying off onto a tangent there again. So let's add a little compression here, I guess, to our bass part. Come up to this thing in the the Pro channel, and I think I've said this before, I usually just add a little bit, like to where it's hitting between 2 and 4, maybe. -2 and 4. Right now it's off, so let's turn it on. Now as you do that, it's going to increase the bass level, so you have to turn down your output to keep a similar overall volume. You'll notice it's going up here as I'm pushing more compression onto it. So that's hanging out at 2 and peaking up to 4 at times. That's pretty good. I'm going to bring the output down still a little bit. Let me hear it again in this next part. Still might be a little bit loud there. Let's bring it down like a dB. I'm going to leave it there for now, I guess. And I'll let you hear the whole track. I'm just going to do one other editing thing here. And that's, whoops. I'm just going to go in and cut out these silent parts, or most of these parts where the bass isn't playing, where there's like, when you see that and there's just like a line there, I can just put in crossfades. Like here, this area here. That means I stop playing. So there's, there might be, there's probably, if there's noise there, it's minimal, very minimal. The only time you'll get noise that I've found is if, again, like if you've got a condenser mic that's live in the room and you've got an air conditioner running, or a car goes by outside and you're not in a well, sound dampened room. Like I'm not in a well sound dampened room by any means here. Or if you've got a single coil pickup on a guitar, it's another instance I've found. Those generate I think that's called a 60 cycle hum. They generate noise just in and of themselves, just being on. Those can. I found that it's enhanced by computer monitors too. If I'm sitting here at my desk like I am now, a few feet from my monitor with my Strat on with the single coils in it. And if I'm facing the monitor, it's actually louder. If I swivel in my chair and face away, that noise, it's just kind of a buzzing sound, kind of an unpleasant buzzing sound. I'll get this one too. What the heck? It's a small little section, but bam, just delete that. And that's just some cleanup stuff there. So anyhow, let's see. Turn that off. One little thing I did there. I don't know how detailed I want to be, but when I'm removing, when I was removing some of these sections here, some of them were so small that the resolution wasn't allowing me to cut the area I wanted in the size. So I just turned the resolution thing off. That then allows you to make basically any size selection you want. In the case of, if you can see how that's turning darker there, that's the selection I'm making. I'm selecting that area. So like if I wanted to, like watch, if I turn it on and say I wanted to select, a certain area here, well, it's moving in these 1/8 note increments. It's set to 1/8 note resolution. So I can, like for instance, here, if I wanted to get between these 2 points, I can't right now because it's at this 1/8 note resolution and it won't let me stop. It automatically jumps. If you can see there, it's jumping to either side of that. If I wanted to, now if I stretch it out this way, it gives me the resolution will start to go up here. Watch. I don't know if it did. It didn't change yet, but let's see. Will it let me go between there now? No. See, it's still on that 1/8 note resolution. So if I go to 16th note, now it probably will. Yeah, see now I can, because it's on a half the resolution it was, I can now stop in the middle of those two places. But another way to do it without having to stretch it, if it's in a certain spot, is just to turn that off. Now I can start and stop anywhere I want here in terms of editing. See, it's not like jumping to note values at all. It's just allowing me to start and stop. And it's just for, if you wanted to edit a part, say you were zoomed in more, and you wanted to just take a specific part out, I find it sometimes easier just to turn that off so that you can just get right into the exact area you want without having to worry about it jumping like it does now to note values. If you can see how it's moving in increments there, you can't move in between those increments, and you have to move in those increments when the note value is selected up here, whatever it is. And I believe the note value, let me see, can you change it? Let's see if we go to like 64th. Yeah, you see, you can do that. You can change it there, which allows you to have more resolution without stretching it. But I usually do it the other way. I think Smart Grid is the one that detects what resolution, yeah. It detects what resolution you're at and automatically sets it there. Whoops. Yeah. Anyway, let's hear this thing. I think I've said that like 3 times now and gotten off on a tangent, so let's hear it. First I'm gonna save. So the only thing I've really added here is the bass part, since last we heard this. have it as it is. Um, I like the bass part. I like the sound and how it came out. I used a Fender Squier Jaguar bass actually, which is pretty cool. I mean, I love what Fender did with these in recent years with these. I mean, actually, I don't know. I guess they've been doing this for a while, but in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, they came out with this series of Squier basses, of which are just, basically cheaper versions of their higher end basses, and the quality of them, at least in my opinion, are just really amazing for the price. I mean, the price is like generally like a tenth maybe of what you would pay for an American version of one of these basses, and you can't beat that price. You can't beat that price, and I really like the Jaguar. It's got the one. It's got the precision pickups, which are the split pickups from the dual pickups from a standard precision, and then it's also got one of the bridge position pickup from the jazz bass. So kind of the best of both worlds idea, I guess there. And I really like it. Anyway, that's what I used here, and I used an Ibanez. I guess that's a JS1000, which is an older Satriani model from Ibanez on the guitar parts here. Let's see. So I don't know. I'm taking this kind of slow overall. This song. I don't know if I'm going to do any more on it today, or at least right now. I might listen to it a lot and just kind of try to get the vibe from it and think about, what lyrics might fit in here, or what. Well, basically that, what lyrics, if any, that I want to put with it. It does feel like it should be a lyric-based song to me. I mean, I suppose any song could go either way, really. That's kind of how I look at it anyway. Any song could be a lyrical or an instrumental song, but I don't know. My idea is that this one's probably going to end up being a lyric-based song. And I don't think I'll be adding like a whole bunch more keyboard. I might add, if any, really, but I might add some other guitar parts maybe. Maybe like a lead in this middle section here. I might add some lead to that middle section. Or maybe some, I don't know, just some fill parts here and there, possibly. And just maybe a vocal part, and that will, and then just the mixing of it, which to some degree I do as I write. Like for instance, one thing that we missed, because like I said, I forgot that I was recording this, and I went ahead and basically filled out this drum part. But one thing that we missed, and I think I still have probably some work to do on it, honestly, but I did some adjusting of the velocity levels. Mostly, I think, just on the parts that I wrote. So I might have to go back in and do some adjusting on, like if you'll see here, if you look here at these parts, I guess I don't really need to highlight them, but you can see that the only thing I really did was the bass drum is down around 85, and I believe the snare hits are up here about 103, 104. That's where I normally put those. But if we move over to one of these MIDI parts that I dragged in, like over here, you can see that I'll highlight it. Oops. If I can. If it'll let me. There we go. You can see that the velocities are much different. Look at the loudest hits here are up in the 119 area. So I'll need to bring those down. And I might even possibly do a little balancing, because sometimes what I find with this MIDI is that for my taste, there's a little too much dynamic range, or just the fact that, like, maybe I want the bass drum to be a little louder in relation to the snare or something. Let's listen to this part. Let's solo this part briefly and just listen to it. Hear what it sounds like. I mean, by itself, it sounds pretty good, honestly. Here, let me zoom in here. Are we starting on the 1 there? I'm not going to bother to loop it for now. But yeah, I mean, I want my snares generally to peak around 103, 104. That's just the place I find kind of a sweet spot for how I like it to sound. But I might have mentioned this before, but one thing that they do in these in this drum program, and I think they do in a lot of drum programs now, is you'll actually have different samples for different velocities. So in other words, if I were to move the snare, velocity way down, that's a different recording of the guy hitting the snare softer than if it's way up here. So what it does is it triggers, depending on where the velocity is, it'll trigger a different sample. If it's down here, it'll trigger a sample of him hitting the snare lightly, which is going to sound different than if it's up here. It's going to trigger a sample of him hitting the snare hard, which just, not only does it change the volume, but it changes the character of the sound. It's a little hard to explain, but I think well, certainly drummers know what I'm talking about, and probably most musicians would know. It's just the intensity with which you strike the note, like on a snare, changes the character of the sound. I don't know if it would be. Let me see if it'd be possible to demonstrate that. Let's see. If I select just that note, and let's bring it way down, like here. And now it's here. Let's trigger it and hear what it sounds like. Do you hear that? It's pretty quiet, but boy, the character is so much different. Now let's bring it up to like maybe a middle volume. I think that's a different sample. It could be the same one. But now let's try going for, up here. Now listen to this. Now granted, it's going to be louder, but you hear how the character of it has changed too? It's almost as if you hear more of the head and less of the snares, maybe. Something like that. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but it's something along those lines. So that's what I'm saying is, depending on the velocity that you set, it's going to change not only the volume, but the character of the sound. And I find that I kind of like, let me see if this changes it. Around 102 or 3 there. What does this sound like? See, that sounds like a different sample to me than the one that we just heard. Let's see. I'll put it back up there again. I don't know. It's hard to tell. That one definitely louder, but is it a different sample than this one? I think it is. The character of it just sounds different to me. The attack or something sounds softer, I suppose, there, than when it's full on like this. Sounds more aggressive. Now it could just be the volume, I suppose, but anyway, it's something else to consider. What I'll probably do, what I'll definitely do is go back, because I don't want, especially like, I don't want the drums to be louder on the verse than they are on the chorus. That's the opposite of what generally you would do. If anything, you would have more volume generally on the chorus. Again, that's just kind of a songwriting thing, and you generally want more energy on the chorus. So all I do in that case is I just highlight these sections and just bring it, because I can, if it's highlighted and the velocities are dark like this, as opposed to that, or they're lighter green, when they're darker green like that, I can just grab one of them and bring it down, and it'll bring all of them down. Like, what is this? Is on 120. See how they all come down? So I'm going to leave it where it is for the moment. And that's just kind of a bit of a tedious process. It's not that tedious. I'll show you. I'll do it right now. Start over here on this first one. Highlight them. And just take, this is a snare hit. I mean, generally the loudest hits are the snare hits. It doesn't matter. The thing that's the loudest I want to bring down, I want it to be down at 103 or 102, right in that 104, somewhere in that area. Trying to get it on 103. There we go. Okay, so I brought all those down. Now I'll do the same thing here. 104, that's fine. Have to be exact. 103. I'll just go to all these parts. Whoops. 103. And this last one. Now, this might need some further tweaking because when I bring it down this much, the snare might be where I want it to be, but again, let's solo this and just hear how it sounds. Again, by itself, still sounds pretty good, pretty balanced, I would say. But we're going to have to deal with the fact that it has come down in volume now, and compared to everything else, it might need to be boosted overall. Let's see. Let's hear what it sounds like. Hold on, did I miss? It looks like I might have missed a section here. Yeah. Let me see, what about this one? No, I just missed that first one somehow. Let's hear it again. Which makes me want to check the other sections like that. That one's alright. That one. This one. Okay, it looks like they're okay. The other ones are okay. And in fact, what I can do is I can shrink this down to where I can see the entire song. Now, see, there's a couple parts here. There's this part right here. Let's see. What is that? That might be a part that I wrote, or it's just a fill. No, I think that's just a fill that let's hear it. It is louder. You can see the velocities, but being that it's by itself there, that might be okay. Let's hear what it sounds like. Yeah, I think that's all right by my ear. That part can stand out. It's by itself. Here's another part where there's a little peak. Let's see what this is. Well, that sounded kind of messed up. Let me hear that again. Well, that's a fill, but you know what? I think I am going to bring it down. Just bring that. I highlighted it there. Just going to bring it down around the 104, and I think it's happening again at the end here. Let's see. Yeah, there's a little fill. It's like maybe a little too loud there. Let's bring that down. There we go. Now you can see just this one part, which is where the drums are kind of soloed by themselves, is a little bit higher. Everything else is in kind of a general, you know, as far as the highest peaks anyway. And you can see the difference too. See, I don't know, it might be kind of hard to tell, but let me see if I can expand it just a little bit. If you look at, say, this section here, or almost any section really other than this section, see how the peaks are, there's more difference, which means there's more dynamics going on, more loud and soft parts. See, the parts that are peaking like down here, I don't know if you can see that, it's pretty fine, but those are quieter, and the ones up here are louder. And those are the MIDI parts that I dragged in, whatever the proper language is, out of the drum program. that look like almost everything. The parts here, the only part that's different is this section right here, which here I'll highlight that for us here if I can find it. It's basically that whole area right there. You see how there's less variation? That's the part that I wrote. Now I could go in and put more variation into it. I could, let's put our cursor here. Highlight that again. And then let's expand this. Make it easier to see the individual parts. I could go in there and add more variation to it if I wanted to. But honestly, I kind of like the sound of this. Listen to it. It's kind of in your face, and maybe you could make the argument that it's not as dynamic sounding. Certainly it isn't as dynamic sounding as look at something right next to it like this. See how there's all these different velocities? Some things, I don't know, these are probably hi-hats or something that are much lower, or a ride cymbal or something way down there. And I don't have that here. A lot of my velocities are, in fact, the only thing that's different is the snare and the bass drum. If there's anything else even going on, let's see. Yeah, there is. I've got some toms here, I think. These are tom parts up here. So there's really just bass drum, snare, and toms going on in this part that I wrote. And I have, other than the bass drum and snare, which are different, it's hard to see because they're landing on a lot of the same notes. But there's a line there that maybe you can see. Here, I'll expand it even more. That's as far as it goes. There's a line there. The bass drum is at, like I said, around 83, 85, and the snares are actually a little low. I think now that I just looked at it, I'm going to go back and adjust that since we're here. So I do that just so I can see where it is, and then this thing has when you're in this kind of zoomed out look, it has a magnifying glass basically, so that you can see what you're grabbing here. So I'm going to grab just the snares. Then I'm going to come back here. I'm actually going to expand this a little. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to move these snares. Oh, there actually are at the right spot now that I look at it. And there is some variation in here. There's some are at like 104, 102. It looks like. But they're basically in the spot I want them. And the toms are slightly different. They're around 97, something like that. 99, somewhere in that area. So I don't know, maybe that's okay. And again, the sound of it, let's solo the drums. Again, I've thought about that a lot, and I thought, do I want to take the time to go in and just change these velocities around? Unless I'm hearing something that's really glaring, I suppose. I generally don't bother to do that. Now, there are exceptions to that. Like if I have a long snare roll, or that's one area I think that I definitely have made changes in. If you have like a long snare drum roll, I will go in and adjust velocities, because if you have like the same velocity on a bunch of snare hits in a row, it can often end up sounding kind of like a machine gun, mechanical and not natural sounding. So just going in and giving the velocities. I'll just give you a quick example here. I'm going to switch to this tool, which just allows me to draw a bunch of notes at once. Makes that kind of crazy sound. But then, like, watch, if I play this part, oops. Okay, it's not doing what I want it to do. Oh, that's because I have the wrong tool. There. Listen to the snare roll. Not too bad. But if I go in, grab those, which are all the snare hits, and then do something like this, right? Put some variation in the velocities. I think that sounds even more natural to my ear. because a human being is not going to be hitting with the exact same velocity every time. Generally, they're just not. That's not the way human beings work. So if you change some of the velocities around like that, especially with something like a snare roll, to my ear anyway, it starts sounding more natural. I'm just going to go ahead and erase those. That sounded kind of cool though. But anyway, yeah, some other stuff to talk about there. Take that out of solo mode and save. Let's see. I don't know how long I went here. Oh, just a little over a half hour. I think I'm going to stop there for now. My previous series, I tried to go for roughly an hour on most of them. I didn't on a couple of them, I think, but I don't know. Taking a little more open-ended approach on this one, I guess, and I think I'm just gonna stop there for now, and I will continue this maybe later today or tomorrow. But thanks for watching or listening, and I hope you have a good one. See ya.